Welcome, everybody, to the Roots Podcast for another episode with me, your host, Sean Pitcher. Today's guest, we have on Allison Maurer. She's the Associate Athletics Director of Student Health Wellness at Knoxville Catholic High School in Tennessee. Allison, really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Sean.
The question I started with every single person that comes on this podcast that I always like to see and know is, what is your roots? Who is Allison?
Man, how far back do we want to go? Okay, so originally I'm from Michigan. So I've been in Knoxville here for 17 years almost, which is crazy to think. I think, yeah, 16 years, almost 16 years. But yeah, so did my undergraduate degree at Olivet Nazarene University. It's a little NAIA school about an hour south of Chicago. Grad school at Georgia State. My first job was at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And so that was in 2004. And there I was an assistant strength and conditioning coach and the sports dietitian. And so back then there really wasn't, sports nutrition. It didn't really exist. And so kind of got to start that program. I was there from 04 to 07. Didn't really know what I was doing in the weight room at all, but part of taking that job was, hey, we want to try this whole nutrition thing, but we need a strength coach. Would you be willing to do both? And I said, sure, why not? So did that 2004 to 2007, and then went to the University of Tennessee from 07 to 2016, where I did just nutrition. And then took about 7-8 months where I just try to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And then ended up with the Pittsburgh Pirates, did that Major League Baseball for 5 years. And then now I'm at the high school. So
how did having a dual background help you? I have a similar story myself. I did an undergrad in dietetics nutrition, but got to the point where I was looking for internships, fellowships, opportunities. And even during that time, which I don't feel like it's too long ago, there wasn't a ton of opportunities still then open and available. So I also had to go that strength and conditioning route, probably the first, I think it was like 3 years after getting out of school. And then I was able to get some opportunities at like Mizzou and Ole Miss, just to basically kind of as a start plug to pick me up to be able to go into sports nutrition. But from your perspective, how does that benefit knowing both of those spaces?
So back then it was pretty important because, like I said, nutrition wasn't really a thing. Sports nutrition wasn't. So you almost had to have two roles or be able to play two roles. Just because, and back then we weren't feeding athletes all the time. So it was like, you do some one-on-ones and team talks, but you take kids to the grocery store, but there was they didn't have a lot of money. And so you're just giving suggestions. You couldn't provide any food for them. So it was just, your hands were tied. So it really was a lot slower paced than it is now. So yeah. And, like I said, I didn't know anything about the weight room when I started. And so my nutrition, my degree is in nutrition and dietetics. My master's is in nutrition. I mean, looking back now, had I known that was the route I would have to take, I would have got my master's in exercise science, but I didn't know that's how things were going to play out. So, but I think it's important if you want to do both. I don't think you need to have a CSCS to get a job because there's just so many out there. So
I know, just looking at it, once in a while you pop on the job board. I'm like, wow, there's like 10, 15 jobs in a couple of days. And back,
it's crazy.
I'm sure you could say different, something similar, but man, when I was on there, you might get one a week and you're just going to apply for it and you hope somebody possibly calls you. And it's like, now it's like, well, whatever you want, wherever you want to go, there's some opportunity somewhere.
Yeah. And it's crazy. I mean, back when I first started, it was like me, Randy Bird, Amy Friel, Amy Bragg, James Harris, Rob Skinner, a few of us. And it was like, if a job came open every 2 years, we were like, oh my gosh, a job. We were so excited about it. And it literally was every couple of years, a job would pop up. It was nuts.
And I know they mentioned at the conference this year, you say that many people, maybe it's like 10 to 15.
Yeah. Yeah. There was, I think, 10 of us.
And that's what they say now, like over 500 people were a part of that conference or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it was huge. It was awesome to see the growth.
And I know we were kind of talking off before we got on here. It's just, you feel like you're getting pulled in 1,000 different directions. New, people that new people that have heard of you that want to ask questions and see what you're doing right now. It's just a really exciting time because you just have those opportunities to be able to talk shop with other professionals in the field.
Yeah.
And, like we said before too, not everyone understands, the same struggles as you're going through that a dietitian will understand.
Exactly.
You mentioned being a part of several different spaces in athletics, high school, professional, college. I know even you probably dabbled in the private setting. I think the only thing you haven't done is tactical, but you kind of bring us through what are some major takeaways or differences, between those different levels of athletics, essentially.
It's interesting because I thought about this question when I read it. And one thing that is, and before I even get to that, it's so interesting. Just looking back, we started at the collegiate level. So Joel Totoro was the only full-time dietitian in the NFL at the time back in 2004. So it's like we started in the middle and then worked our way up to the professional level. And so now we have the top end of the jobs and the blueprint and what that looks like. But we need to now go back to the bottom. Like we got to go the other direction. I think the biggest thing at the high school level, they want to know everything. They listen to all the wrong people. But they want to know the right thing to do. And I appreciate that about that population so much, is that they may tell you that they don't care, or they may say or look like they're not listening, but then there'll be the sneaky kid that's like, hey, so I stopped drinking energy drinks. And I'm like, it's cool. Because I want to be like, finally, but so they're listening and they want to do the right thing. They want things to work. They just get so inundated with false information that I think they feel obligated to believe, that they just get lost. At the collegiate level, like, I don't even know what that looks like now. It seems like an eternity ago that I was there. But when I was at the collegiate level, it was where I am at the high school level now. It was the population that wanted to learn, wanted to do the right thing. But also a lot of really bad habits. They're in college and they've had these really bad habits for a really long time. And then they don't get serious about their nutrition and fueling until their senior season.
Yep.
When it's time to get looked at, with pro scouts and that sort of thing. So that was interesting there. And then at the major league level and pro level, in baseball, at least, it was just a lot of fine tuning. So a lot of the guys did see a value in nutrition because they knew it was going to help increase their longevity in the sport, and it was going to help them recover better, reduce the risk of injuries, help them sleep better, all those things that are ultimately going to make them a better athlete and be able to play for a longer period of time.
Do you feel like you're constantly at a battle with social media now? Because athletes are constantly on it, and there's all these random influencers and quote unquote nutritionists, and they're like bringing their phones up to you and say like, hey, look at this. Like, is this right? Is this wrong? Like, what do you think?
Yes and no. Yes, it's annoying because I'm like, here we go again. But at the same time, it creates such good conversations that, we'll end up going off on a tangent in a class and spend 15 minutes talking about Liver King. And it's, it's all really good stuff. It's all, getting them to really pick apart what is truth and what is just the BS. And that, so I don't mind it, but at the same time, I'm like, did we not just talk about this? How it doesn't make sense. And so why are we still following that individual?
It's almost like when you're talking to a dietitian, you're talking through a research article, and like, how do you pick through a research article? It's almost now we're in, like, let's say in your course, you could almost have a section of it. How do you navigate through social media?
Yes.
How do you know what's BS? How do you know what's actually high quality information? It's just it's crazy to think about how it shifts to that point where we may even have to just educate on that section where we've never thought about that before.
Yeah. Yep. So it's fun. They find the weirdest people to follow. So.
Oh yeah. I had an athlete at a previous facility that I was at. I could still remember. He comes in with this article and he says, Sean, I can't eat fruit anymore. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, do you see watermelons? Specifically watermelons. He's like, if you crack open a watermelon and there's this big open space in the middle, he's like, it can cause cancer. And I'm looking at him. I know something just like out in like left field. And I'm like, no, Absolutely not. And then I had to like run through these questions and I just asked him and I was like, do you think this is right or not? And he just kind of went, no, 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 no. And then by the end, he goes, yeah, I don't think this is actually a really good article after you ask me all those questions. I
And
was
you're like, ding, ding, ding.
like, no brainer, of course.
Yeah, totally. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's
Uh, how is it working with professional baseball level athletes? A lot of obviously the population I know probably comes from like the Latin descent, so maybe possibly communication barriers, having to obviously allocate foods at their preferences based on what their cultural background and where they're from. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed that part of the job. I loved working with the Latin players. I'm half Mexican myself, so I get that culture. And it was just the language was, I mean, I'm not completely fluent in Spanish, but I can do what I, need to do to communicate and that sort of thing. But it was just, it's interesting just because I think in the States, we get frustrated when people don't do what we want them to do. But working with that culture, it's so ingrained that you can't just change it overnight. And we can't, if someone's trying to lose weight, we can't just change their bad habits in a day. So it's very similar. You have to build that relationship, meet them where they're at. And I think I told the story at CPSDA about taking the Latin players miniature golfing,
Yes.
and so like the minor league players. And so like those guys loved that. And then I took them out to fast food after that. And that may seem like, oh my gosh, how could you do that? Well, guess what? If I need them to hydrate better, they're probably going to do it because I was willing to stick my neck out and allow them to have a little fun, relax a little bit. We're going to do this something different, but now I need you to help me out. And so will you do better here, here, and here? And I mean, that's just really, it's patience really. And yeah. And then when you're planning menus, you just find a Latin restaurant in that city and make sure that there's food available. And yeah, and most of the time they're only going to eat that. But if you can get them to take a multivitamin and hydrate well, then you're probably in a much better spot than you would have been had you tried to force them to eat vegetables. So
Exactly. Nothing's ever going to be 100%.
no.
You got to meet them halfway. And I think the major thing there is, a lot of time individuals will get frustrated with athletes. Why aren't you doing
Yes.
this? Why aren't you doing that? Why is it so hard? And I mean, literally to your point, it's you have to get to know them.
Yeah.
If you don't know them, there's no relationship, there's no bond, there's no trust there. Like they're not going to care about anything that you
No.
say or anything that you're trying to bring to the table. And some of those behaviors are just so deep rooted. I mean, you could probably say the same, but it's taken me years in some cases to get guys to change one or two things, let
Yeah.
alone change a majority of the things that I've showed them need to be changed.
Right.
So just being realistic from that standpoint and also communicating to those staff that want those quick and fast results all the
Right.
time and just show them this is not realistic to happen in like a couple of days. There's so much stuff we have to unravel with the individual. And there may be stuff also deep-seated psychologically where we need to bring
Right.
mental conditioning or sports psych in, and maybe they have to work with them first before we can even think about doing anything on our end.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, it's fun. It's, just another part of the puzzle. And,
That's what makes the job interesting. It's never going
exactly.
to be
Exactly. Totally.
So obviously you're in the high school setting now. What sparked you to move into that section of sports nutrition?
So I'd been teaching part-time at the school since 2017. Just taught 2 classes. And so the school president and the academic dean, they were like, let's just see what this looks like. Let's give it a shot. So the first season or the first semester I taught it was fall of 2017, and we had 42 kids sign up. And then since I was working in baseball, I didn't teach in the spring because of spring training and, the season starting. So there was no way I could teach spring. So it was just fall. The following fall, we had 96 kids sign up. So they were like, wow, so this is a hit. And they were like, can you teach 4 blocks? And I said, nope, I can't. I don't want to. So I taught 3. And then, from that point, they were like, ever want to consider this full time? I just wasn't ready. And then I started working with the football team in the weight room because I was like, you know what, maybe someday I do want to do this full time. So why don't I see what strength and conditioning looks like here. They didn't have a strength coach at all. And so worked with football, and then just kind of grew it from there. And then 2020, obviously, we all know COVID happened. And then was in the bubble, and I was like, now's the time.
Here's the transition.
I mean, it took my soul. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not even gonna try to make light of it. It absolutely took my soul, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So met with the academic dean and the school president, and they let me write my job description, create my job title. I had a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan. I laid out what teams I was going to work with in the weight room, what classes I wanted to teach. I mean, everything. And they were like, okay, let's do it. So yeah, so 2021, fall of 2021 is when I started, because I did go through the 2021 season with the Pirates as well, just because I wanted to go through one more season where it was semi-normal.
Yeah, we're like, am I going to continue this, or is like the dysfunctionalness like too much right now with everything that's going on, or it's just like, all right, I'm just really done with this level.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to deal with all the long hours and
Exactly.
and traveling or whatever comes up with that.
Yeah. And I have 3 boys, and it's, they're in the thick of all of their baseball stuff themselves. And I'm like, I don't want to watch other people's kids play baseball anymore. I want to watch my own kids play baseball.
Yeah, it almost seems, once, and it's not just dietitian, I see it with strength coaches and other stuff. Like, once you get to a certain point and you have your own family, it's like, what is the next destination? Is it going to be high school setting, the tactical setting? Is it going to be going into private? Something that's going to give me some more flexibility to be able to spend time with my family, because we see in a lot of situations, some families aren't together for very long when having to work 60, 80 hours a week. And if you're not with an individual or a person that doesn't understand athletics or wasn't an athlete before, sometimes it's very challenging and tough to explain them, like, yeah, I have to be here for this long, or I have to be here for this time, or I have to go on this travels. Ordinary individuals that aren't in that space sometimes just they don't get it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's tough for sure.
Like, the last thing you want to do is tell your boss, like, oh, sorry, I can't work today, or I can't go on this trip. It's like, well, they're gonna find another person. They're probably gonna get with you.
Exactly. And they'll probably find someone for cheaper.
Yes. What do you base your education off of? Like, is there a specific book? Is there specific stuff that you've just accumulated over the years, and that's how you teach? Like, how do you roll out your curriculum?
Yeah, I geek out on the research library. I'm not going to lie. The CPSTA research library, that's honestly where I get a lot of stuff. So I have my core units that I teach. So I teach obviously carbs, protein, fat, supplements, sleep, nutrition and concussions, and / brain health, eating disorders. We do a fad diets unit, vitamins and minerals unit. So I have all those units. And so now I'm at a point where so right now I'm updating my sleep unit. So I'm going to the research library, looking at what new research there is on sleep, adding new slides, taking slides out that are dated. And so that's kind of my textbook, is the research library, just because I feel like that gives you like not textbook stuff. I don't want just the same thing over and over again that you get from different books. And I don't give the students a textbook either. We're learning based on my experiences, based on what I think they need to know, that sort of thing. So
how do you then take that? Because I think the big challenge a lot, no matter what it is with sports nutrition, is taking the information and getting them in the space where they're ready to then apply it or know how to apply it. Because
you tell stories. You absolutely
stories is a game changer.
Yeah, you have to be a storyteller when you're presenting to athletes, I think, because just spitting out information is one thing, but giving examples of like, this athlete when I was here and this athlete when I was here, personally, this is what works for me, or you play football and this is what I would suggest for you. So like telling stories of what it looks like for real people, and how things have worked and how things have not worked, is what really gets them engaged, because they don't want to just hear facts. They want to hear how it affected someone else.
Have you implemented any type of like activities or thing where they have to like tactilely do stuff, or like get up and do stuff, so that it's not just, because attention spans nowadays are so minimal. It's like, if you have 1 or 2 slides, like they're already checked out. It's like, how am I gonna what our academics calls anchoring them back in. Like, how are
Yeah.
you anchoring them back in between those slides or every couple of slides, for example?
So one thing is they can't have their phones. So we have these little phone pouches. So when they walk in the classroom, they have to put their phones up in their number pouch. And so that's one thing in the school that's a school-wide rule. You put your phones up, which is hugely helpful. But yeah, so if we're talking carbohydrates, we'll do an activity like having them identify. So I'll give them the sheet of paper listed with like everything from Snickers to Skittles to wheat bread and we'll talk through. So they have to circle everything that's got added sugar. They have to underline everything that's natural sugar. They have to, you know what I mean? Like identify what is whole grain. And so then we talk through that. The protein one is super fun because I have all these different foods in serving sizes and they have to write down how many grams of protein they think is in each serving. And they're like
Far off.
like I throw apples on there and stuff and they're like 4. I'm like, no, but they're like, is this a trick question? I don't know. Is it a trick question? So, those kinds of activities are fun. And then we do Kahoots. Kahoot is a really fun program where I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, it's nice because it's super competitive.
Yeah. The thing that's difficult about Kahoot is if a kid is losing, then they're just not gonna, they're gonna stop
it. Check out.
Yeah. So that's my only problem with that. We do I call it the honey stinger prize pack. So so we do at the end of each unit, we do a quiz. And then after the quiz, we do a honey stinger prize pack game. And so the game is a quiz based on the most random, stupid stuff you can possibly imagine. So like one is on kitchen appliances. One is, and it's like identifying different kitchen appliances. One is on food safety. One is on cooking terms. And they're always like, why are these all about food? I'm like, because it's a nutrition class. Like, but this is not nutrition related to what we talk about. Like, I know that's the beauty of it. It has nothing to do with what we've talked about, but it gets them like just thinking in a different way. I said, you guys someday are going to be like, oh, I remember that chicken has to be cooked to 165 degrees for my nutrition class. You're welcome. So, I'm like, those are the random facts you guys are going to remember someday. You're going to know what a double boiler is because you had to identify it in my class.
You're going to be thankful when you're at a restaurant, a trivia game, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, she taught me this like 10 years ago.
I know.
I know the answer right now.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah. So I'll do different activities like that. I don't do tests. We do nutrition bingo. So they get a big old bingo card and you can make bingo online, which this is the beauty of, you can do anything online now. So I made bingo and it's like, I think I have like maybe 60 call numbers or call words. And so it might be like DHA. And so I read, so they all have their bingo cards and I'll say, all right, this is the omega-3 that is primarily found in the brain and retina.
Oh, and then they have to like hit DHA.
Well, yeah. So then they have to take their M&M or their Skittle and put it on DHA.
And you had M&Ms and Skittles, so that's another buy-in right there.
Totally. It's so fun. It's so fun. So then it's not a test or a quiz, but they still have to know the answer.
Yes.
Because it's bingo. And of course they want to win. So yeah.
I like the creativity there. I wrote a couple of those down to talk with academics to bring to the table.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
They would like that too. We do a couple of things on that, and we'll track like meal and supplement compliance. And then this year, all we did was if you had the best compliance for the month, the chef would make you any meal that you want.
Oh, that's cool.
Any dessert, drink, food, whatever you wanted, didn't matter what it was, they would make it. And then next year, my plan is to do a team competition. So that would be you get your individual winner, and then you get your team winner, and then whoever has the best compliance at the end of the month. We'll do some kind of like post lift or post practice. I don't know, ice pops, smoothies, I don't know, food truck, something kind of fun like that. Just to get them to continue to keep competing and keeping on top of it and just doing what they're supposed to do, rewarding the team and the people that are working really hard and doing what they're supposed to do. You're going to get it. If you don't want to work hard and you don't want to put the effort into it, well, I'm sorry, you're probably not going to get the prize. Yeah. Or since there's that team perspective, if your teammate's not doing what they're supposed to do, and you want to win the prize because you see the other team winning it, more often than not, they're probably going to get on the individual's like to pick
Yeah.
up.
And this is at your high school, at the high school or at college?
So this is at the facility that I work at over.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it.
Yep. So we're trying to find all these different creative ways to
Yeah.
help from that perspective, because a lot of things we see use in the past, for example, may not work anymore. So we're having to be really creative and think outside the box and just understanding like what is going to motivate this generation's athlete compared to like 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That would have
for
looked
sure.
good before, because it is light years difference in some cases.
Yes, it is. Those are great ideas.
Another question I'll ask, because obviously I know besides nutrition, you do the strength conditioning part. Now, my fiance is also a strength and conditioning coach. Any feedback for other female strength coaches that want to get into the field or currently in the field? I know sometimes, just from feedback sometimes that she gives me, it could be challenging working in that environment as a female staff or a female coach.
Yeah, it can be, but I think just stay positive, because it's easy to we hired a new football strength coach, which I'm so glad, so I don't have to do football anymore. And he literally does the same things that I did when I was a strength coach for football, but he's huge and has big muscles. And I'm like, and the boys are like, oh, he's so smart. We're doing this. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, I'm glad. I love that you guys love him. I think he's great. That's awesome. Like, I cannot change that. I'm never going to look like him.
Yep.
Like, I'm going to be small and I'm always going to be a female. Shoot. So, but I'm okay with that. As long as the right message is getting across, they're doing the right thing, they're not getting hurt, and they're making progress, I'm good. And so, as females, sometimes we can get territorial and we get a little jealous, at least for me. I know I can be that way sometimes, but you know what? I'm too old for that. Like, I'm just glad that there's someone else to help support. And so I say, just keep plugging along, keep learning. I'm almost 43 and I'm still taking like strength and conditioning courses or speed stuff or whatever. Cause I mean, maybe you have that one thing, that one piece of knowledge that other people don't have. And it's valuable. So
yeah, it's like finding a way to make yourself unique and set yourself apart. And how are you going to bring something to, let's say, that strength and conditioning group, or also what you said there as well is we're just here for one goal, and that's to support and help the athlete. So how do we get on the same page to be able to do that? No matter who the personality is, what the differences are, like we need to do it for them at the end of the day.
Yeah. And find your thing to specialize in. So like, I really, really, really love doing speed training. Like I love doing that stuff. And so, that's kind of my happy place. And so, whatever any male or female, whatever they are really passionate about, it's cool to kind of specialize in the strength and conditioning world too. So,
yeah. What do you think we should do to get more dietitians in the high school space? I mean, I think this is a literally an untapped arena. Like there's hardly any dietitians that I don't know that work in high school that are full-time.
Yep.
Obviously, we have people like Tavis, who's doing a great job with My Sports Dietitian. He's trying to help from that respect. But obviously also consulting can only do so much too.
Right.
You having that full-time presence in place and being able to be in their space frequently, or if not daily, like in your case, definitely makes a night and day difference. So what do you feel we need to do to get to that point to have those people in those spaces?
Yeah, I think a huge thing is changing the narrative. So for so many years, people say, oh, I work with high school athletes, or I work with this high school. Well, okay, working with a high school and working in a high school are not the same. And even at CPSCA, I have people ask, like, how do you get into a high school? Well, okay, do you want to get in the high school or do you want to work with the high school? So it's really just like, there's so much more to it. And so you have to change what it looks like. I'm a teacher. At the end of the day, I'm a school teacher. I'm a dietitian and I'm a sports dietitian and I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist, but I'm a school teacher. So I teach nutrition classes. I teach weight training classes. I teach speed, agility, and plyometric class. Like, I'm at prom chaperoning. I'm, moderating powder puff. I'm substitute teaching for another teacher. So it's, I'm in it in a different way than I think people realize. And so I'm not just doing team talks. I'm not doing a bunch of one-on-ones. It's you take my class. This is where you learn about it. You can see me anywhere around school. I'm probably not going to go to your practice. I'm probably not going to go to your sporting event unless it is the same sport my kids play. I just, like I love you all and I want to support you. Here's how we're going to learn. And this is what it looks like. I'm not making recovery stuff for everyone. It's going to be for the teams that I work with in the weight room, which is boys, girls, basketball, and baseball. So, but I'm still able to build relationships with the cross country kids and the tennis kids and whatever other sport that needs me. I can build those relationships because they have me in class and they see me every day. So I think that the thing we need to do is actually get jobs in high schools. And I think a lot of people are scared because they're like, well, I just want to do consulting. That's fine. And that's going to be your impact consulting. So I didn't want that. I didn't want to just be a consultant. I wanted to be in the school with my kids. I wanted to live it with them every day because I've done that at the major league level. I've done it at the collegiate level. And so yeah, I think getting people to understand working with a school or in a school, which do you want?
What do you want? Because if you're going to fully invest, it sounds like you're going to obviously have to do other things that you may have not done or you may not want to do. And if that's not for you, then you have to be able to know that going into the situation. Like if you don't want to possibly teach or possibly do some other stuff that's going to be involved with that high school, that's going to make up your whole job to actually get you a job in that space, then you got to really think about how you're going to approach that if that's what your goal is.
Yeah. And my passion is to get dietitians in high schools, not working with. So I don't necessarily have the answer for people who say, how do you start working with a high school? I don't really know because that's not my passion. My passion is getting you in there full time. If that's what I know the answer to that, but I don't know because athletic directors don't want to pay money to have someone come in and talk to their football team. Like they just want you to do it for free. And you might get one or two kids from that as, clients on the side, and you might get a little bit of word of mouth, but I mean, so yeah.
So does it seem then like maybe as a first possible option, like going through the academics team, going through and maybe having conversations with parents that are local to that area to see general interest, and then maybe conversations kind of spark from there?
Yeah. And it's definitely not like, hey, I want to be full time. I literally started out teaching 2 classes. And I think that's what dietitians who want to work with high schools freak out about too. I don't want to teach. It's 2 hours a day. If you have the whole day and you're doing private practice anyway, most of your clientele is in school. So why wouldn't you offer to teach a couple
let's
classes?
Say you did 2 classes in the morning, right?
I know.
And all your rest of your people are in the afternoon, then like that works.
Yes. So yeah. So I would start slow like that. Meet with an academic dean. Because I was telling someone at CPSDA, every school needs new electives. Like there's only so many times kids can take oceanography or financial planning or forensics, and there's only before the academic department is like, we need some new options. We just need something fresh. We need something new. And so it's helpful because like I said, talking with ADs are like, oh yeah, that sounds great. I'll get back to you. And then they're like, can you come here and do it for free? And we promise you'll get a few players from a free talk.
It's like, no, my time is valuable at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like,
no doubt.
I know, I understand I have to show value to you. I get that, but then that's going to have to come with a cost at a certain extent to a certain time. Yeah. But I think what you kind of demonstrated there, so you got yourself in, you did 2 classes, it showed a lot of value. It then was seen by multiple people within the school, which then they pursued you for more opportunities that you can provide. And then that's essentially you're doing what you can do and what you can control. And if you're doing that very well for the couple hours that you were received, people are going to see that at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Notice.
Absolutely. And you can make such a bigger impact when you have a classroom of 22 kids versus in an hour versus one kid in an hour.
Exactly. You're hitting a lot more, and then that kid's going to another student that they might know. That student's maybe going to their
Oh
parents they
yeah.
might know. So it's like social media, right? Like you're trying to
Yes.
get out to all the communities within your community to spread
Yep.
the word to a certain extent. And if enough of those community members agree, well, you're probably going to be in a pretty good position for them to
Right.
continue on with you,
Exactly.
which
Exactly.
is a huge plus. And I like kind of what you said there too, like having stuff that's fresh. One of the places I was at prior when I first got there, I remember the first workshops I went into, and the kids were just like, we're learning about this again,
Yeah.
doing this topic again. So I ended up coming up with the system where I am polling them, and I was like, here's all the possible topics we could talk about. And I started out at the very beginning, like, let me know what you want to talk about. And then I end up putting it into a curriculum, which I call like your body is your business model. So we have
Oh, that's cool.
like the basement, floor 1, 2, 3, and then we have the penthouse. So then I can basically tell them like, okay, well, we're going to talk about carbohydrates first, because that's the base before we can talk about pre-game fueling or how to put together a performance.
Yeah.
Like, and then I'll usually like go and test them. Like, hey, can you tell me what a carb is? Hey, do you know what a carbohydrate is? And then basically just go around the room to see what the general knowledge base is. Or I've also done where I've also tested them too, to kind of see if they know it as well. And then it gives them feedback where, hey, 80% of you have no clue what this is, but you're all telling me you want to talk about these higher level topics.
Right.
This is a key example where I can't talk about these topics because you're not showing me via what you answered with that you even know what this basic level stuff is.
Right.
So then they can't come back at you and say, well, we just want to go to this. Well, there's a progression here.
Right.
You're never going to understand any of this until we get past these points.
That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, I part of that kind of term I got, I worked with a leadership coach at IMG Academy, and
Oh yeah.
did like a dual talk one day. So I talked about the nutrition side and how it can help with building your body. And then he talked about the leadership side, building your business. And then kind of that
That's cool.
terminology came together, and then it just ended up working because nowadays with NIL,
Yeah.
how do you make money for yourself and your name, your likeness? But also too, if you want to play sports for a long period of time, how are you going to take care of yourself to invest in your business to be able to be in that position for a long period of time too, which go
Yeah.
hand.
Totally. That's awesome. I like that.
So we're winding down here. Kind of last question I wanted to ask you, is there maybe one person that you recommend someone can go to right now that would be amazing to reach out to, that would be an instant resource for them in the field of nutrition?
Ooh, like a professional?
It could be any practitioner that you're like,
Oh
man,
my gosh.
this person, you go talk to them for 5-10 minutes, like they're going to be a game changer for you.
Oh my goodness. I only get to pick one?
You can pick one.
Oh my gosh.
I know I got you there.
That is so hard. I feel like I'm gonna hurt people's feelings if I don't say their name.
Hey, anyone she doesn't say, we're giving you much love, but
Seriously? Okay. No, I think I'm gonna plead the fifth here because I don't like there's so many people. There's so many. I mean, like
how about we?
Rob Skinner and we have this little thread there where the retired are it's RETIRD, like we're retired. So it's like Becky and Joel and Beth Wolfram and Randy Bird and Kelly Rossi, like Scott Sainer, like we're all on this thread. And that's actually like that group is probably that whole group is those are my people. Like that's the people right there.
We'll say this: don't be afraid to reach out to individuals, DM them, hit them up, have a conversation. Like you never know where that conversation is going to go. That could put you in a better position, or even a contact for another contact later on.
It's so true.